In this tutorial, we'll be looking at the maze building program from Adventure 6. Now this program is a little bit different in so much as the instructions in terms of the maze it should build are set out in a file and not in the program itself. If we look at this file, we can see if we look at the ones representing the walls of a maze and the zeros representing the space between, we can see a pattern of how a maze is made up. And if you imagine the ones in Minecraft as being blocks and the zeros being air, you can see how a maze could be built up. This file is known as a comma-separated variable file. Each of the elements in this file, in our case blocks, are separated by a comma. Have a block, a comma, a block, a comma, a block, a comma. And each of the rows in the maze are separated by a return. So each line of the file represents one row in our maze. Let's run the program and see what it does before having a look at the code. Here's our maze, with the walls as gold blocks, if we remember our way out, suddenly we're at the other side. Now what's interesting if you look at the maze on the top, you can see how it matches the file that built it up. Now the great thing about using files as input to programs is that if we want to make a new maze, a bigger maze, a better maze, a more difficult maze, we don't have to change our program, we just have to create a new file. Now let's have a look at the program and see what it does. The first thing the program does is imports the Minecraft and the block modules before making the connection to Minecraft. It then sets up some constants, which is the blocks it's going to use for the gap, the walls and the floor. In this case, gap being air, walls being gold and the floor being made of grass. And the next statements open up the file. So we create a constant called filename and give it the name of the file. The file being our comma-separated variable file of ones and zeros, which is the pattern for our maze. We then use the open command to open the file as read-only. And we create a handle to that file in a variable called f. The next thing we're going to do is get the player's position, because that's going to be where we're going to create our maze. And we create three constants called origin x, y and z. These are the start of the maze, which is one block in x and y away from the player, so we don't create the maze on top of them. We then loop through each line in the CSV file, each line representing one row in our maze. And we use a function called split to split the line into a list. And we tell the function split to split the data by commas, which means that in our variable data we will end up with a list of ones and zeros, in this case being the ones and zeros for each line within our file. We then say for each cell in the data, a cell being an individual item, and we say, well, if that cell is 0, our block, or our B variable, will be a gap, in this case air. Else, if it's not a 0, it must be a 1, our block will be a wall. And we then create that block at Z, X and Y. Create the block either as a gap, in this case, or air, or wall, gold. We then create another block up one position from Y, so our wall is 2 blocks high, and one block below we create the floor. And as we're looping in this for loop for each cell, we increase X by 1, which moves our position in Minecraft one block along, and also one character long in our file. And we do the same for Z. So for each lines are Z going downwards and X or cells going across. And the program continues to loop through until it has created blocks for every cell, whether they are walls or gaps, and for every line in the file. And that's how the maze is built. So let's create a new maze. To create a new maze, we just need a new file. I've created a new file called maze2.csv, and I've saved it to the My Adventures folder. By using ones and zeros, I'm going to create a new maze. Once I've created my maze, I just need to save it. And change my program. So instead of using maze 1, I use maze 2, save my program, run my program, and I have a different maze built in Minecraft. Your Minecraft maze can be any width, any length, as difficult or as easy as you want to make it. Your maze doesn't even have to be made out of air and blocks. What about glass and water for a really difficult maze?